Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Jumping right into the action, our first guest up today, U.S. Senator Eric Schmitt of Missouri. He has a new book out titled The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. It is a Chuck-approved book. Honestly, Chuck, it's one of the few good books you get from politicians. I hate to put it that way.
You can tell he wrote a lot of it. So,
welcome, Senator Schmitt.
I appreciate that. That is, I love the stamp of approval.
Yes,
that's very nice.
You'll love it. So, Senator, one of the accusations against President Trump that I have always found humorous, but the left likes to scream it from the rooftops, is that this man is going to cause World War III. You even had John Bolton, who's the figure in the media today, say that a major international crisis was much more likely of Donald Trump's second term. What would you tell these people? Because I don't think it's based on reality.
Yeah, I think people kind of caught up with the game of permanent Washington, the left, the Democrats trying these scare tactics. It's very clear that President Trump's first instincts are diplomacy. And that takes a lot of confidence, a lot of strength. He projects America sort of first energy and strength, which makes that possible. He knows what the levers are to try to bring people to the table. You look at some of the, whether it's India and Pakistan or whether it's Azerbaijan or in Armenia or now, of course, trying to open the door for a discussion with Ukraine and Russia. That's what he wants. That's existed for a long time, where a lot of people, their first instinct is that America could be everywhere all at once, all the time. We're the global cop of the beat. There's no conflict we shouldn't be involved with. That's changing, thankfully. And what are our core national interests? It's the homeland, and it's focusing more on China. That the 21st century is going to be defined by who wins that great competition. And Europe needs to stand up on its own 2 feet a lot more than it has in the last 30 years, that's for sure. So President Trump's bringing about that change in dynamic, but along the way is bringing parties together because of America's strength to the peace table. So I just think that criticism falls flat. That wasn't the case in the first term, and it's certainly not the case now in the second term.
Senator, one of the things that strikes me is that despite this sort of permanent Washington uniparty war all the time blob, those people at the same time were afraid to do what Donald Trump does so well and so easily, which is get on the world stage and say, America is still great. We have nothing to apologize for. And you need to listen, because if you want to do business with us, if you want to exist in this world with us, we have to be taken into consideration. You cannot continue to put the interests of the United States and its people way behind the interests of the rest of the planet.
Yeah, I think if you want to understand that mentality, you have to understand what globalism really is, right? And globalism is this idea that we're all just sort of world citizens. You got all these people that are much more comfortable in Davos than they are in my hometown of Bridgeton, a working class neighborhood. And they bought into this belief that we should ship our factories overseas because it's cheaper and then import foreign labor because that's cheaper. And they've really lost sight of what it means to have a country. And we're not an economic zone. We're a sovereign country. We're a people, and we have interests. President Trump understands that. I think a lot of the people that have come before him, they didn't buy into that. And really, what we're dealing with is a reckoning that's 30 years in the coming, or in the making, where after the Berlin Wall, came down and Soviet communism was defeated, there was never really an adjustment. There was never an adjustment in our foreign policy. There was never really an adjustment as relates to trade imbalances that exist. And President Trump's doing all that, and they don't like it. And I think that's the ascending view. I don't know that it's the majority view in Washington yet, but you look at the people I think who've been elected in the last 8 years or so on the Republican side, much more alignment, generally speaking, with President Trump's worldview. But I would also say even the people that were elected before then, the fact that President Trump came all the way back and won the popular vote has got everybody's attention. And I think that's why you're seeing, even with these slim majorities, we're able to get a lot of things done.
Senator, you said something there I have not heard any other person say. We are not an economic zone. Is that the origin of the downfall that we're seeing in Europe, that they gave up those national identities and their individual strengths for this sort of socialized approach to the globe?
Yeah, look at, and it's also, I think, if you want to understand why they have sort of opened the door for mass migration and dealing with the problems that they're dealing with, it's the same thing. So, they're uncomfortable having pride in being an Italian or a Frenchman or whatever, and then they open up the doors, and then all of a sudden your country's kind of unrecognizable. And then because of the woke stranglehold they sort of have, censorship's now become a thing. And one of the reasons why it's so important, I handled the rescissions package. One of the reasons why it's so important to kind of defang and disrupt and defund many of the USAID priorities, that is where kind of globalism was being funded, with your tax dollars, by the way, to places like the Institute for Peace and all these sort of nonprofits, or these NGOs, I should say, that were working against American interests. They were fueling mass migration. They're part of the censorship enterprise that we exposed in Missouri versus Biden. Not to plug the book, we'll get into that. Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. You can buy now on Amazon. But we, part of the discovery in that case, we realized that when we fought back, that a lot of the groups and the federal bureaucracy were aligned against the American interests and censoring Americans. So anyway, the rot runs pretty deep. But I think if you really want to get at the heart of the mentality, it's these elites are everywhere, but they're from nowhere. Like, they don't really believe in a national pride or what it means. And I think that in America, we got to hold on to that. It's a special place, and we have our own interests. And those interests sometimes don't align exactly with our European allies or wherever,
No.
And so, like, and we need to bring them along to our worldview. We can't be, submissive to that view. And I think that's what President Trump's, really brought about.
We're with Senator Eric Schmitt of Missouri. He is the author of a new book, The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. If you DM us on social media for the first 5 people, we will send you a free copy of that book. Okay, this is a 2-part question. President Trump has got involved in D.C. crime. There has been 7 straight days of 0 homicides. I actually Googled that on Google AI, and they said there's many reasons why this is happening. No credit to Trump at all on Google AI. But carjackings are down, robberies down, car thefts down, overall violent crime is down. What do you tell people who think that he is simply, going above and beyond his power as President of the United States? And then after that, could you tell us a little bit about the historic FBI investment you were able to receive to combat violent crime in St. Louis?
Yeah, so President Trump has every authority to do what he's doing right now for a period of time in the District of Columbia. It's not a state. It's, federal jurisdiction. And he said, look, we have a problem. It's a very dangerous place, and we're going to try to solve it. I think what it's proving is that if you actually concentrate on law enforcement, it can matter. I don't think that this is not 2020 anymore. People are tired of this nonsense of being told that police are the problem. I can tell you as a former prosecutor, there's no substitute for a law enforcement presence and prosecutions. Like, you do 2 things. First of all, you get the bad people off the streets. They're causing a lot of the problems. And it's really kind of a subset of criminals that are really the violent criminals. It's a smaller number than you would think. Some of these, like I would just talk about in Missouri, there's some of these groups, they're gangs that do carjackings. They're not like, 10,000 people doing it. It's a relatively small number. You get those people off the street, it matters. And then also there's a deterrent there too, right? People understand that there are going to be consequences. So I think we're getting back to the basics on law enforcement. It's been very effective. You mentioned it. It's sad that that's like some huge achievement, but the truth is it is. There's not been a murder in a week. Carjackings are down 83%, and robberies are down about 50%. So the proof is in the pudding, and this can be done if you actually are focused on it. As it relates to St. Louis, all of us have our kind of home state priorities, and St. Louis has been plagued, like most major cities, with violent crime. And when Kash Patel came in during his confirmation process, he expressed an interest of getting FBI agents out into the field, out of Washington, out into the field. I said, I got the place for you. So we've been working on this, and it's the largest permanent investment of FBI personnel anywhere in the country per capita. And I think that's a big win. These are not going to be paper pushers. This is a group of people who are going to be focused on violent crime. They're going to be working with state and local law enforcement to go do that. And I think that's the kind of commitment we need. And we can show that, look, if you have that kind of presence and you're focused on it, you can yield, important results that matter to real people. These are quality of life issues. And I think Republicans, we have to remain focused on quality of life issues. Let the Democrats argue about calling somebody Latinx or whatever that you want to talk about. but let's focus on, crime, cost of living issues, jobs, the border, things that people really care about in their lives.
That brings up a good question. I was having my morning Red Bull run this morning before I came to the studio, and the cashier was telling me, "Guy, you get to know because you get to know the same people that he needs to eat more red meat." And I said, "Well, how come you don't do it?" He goes, "Well, it's just too expensive."
Mm-hmm.
What can we tell Republicans are doing to make affordability better for people who are working families?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First is, in the one big beautiful bill, from a strategy perspective, it was important to have all that in there to, because we need a simple majority to get it done. But the challenge now is, and the charge, I suppose, is to break that out into its component parts and talk to the American people about what's in it. The truth is, those tax cuts from 2017 were set to expire, and it would have been the largest tax increase in American history. So by doing it and adding additional tax relief, that means at least $10,000 for the average working family in this country that they're going to save, it's money in their pocket, right? So that's the difference. Democrats voted against it. We supported it. I also think having, it's not just about businesses or whatever, and that's important, obviously, but like for the guy that's busting his tail working overtime, there's no tax on overtime now.
Right.
For the waitress that's working a double shift who relies on tips, there's no tax on those tips. If you're in the hospitality industry, that's a huge deal. That's a vast majority of your income are the tips, and you're not going to be taxed on that anymore. So that's money in your pocket. So I think we have to be talking about what that means for people. More money for educational choice. People can utilize those sorts of things that matter to people with their kids. The other thing that's true is, the folks I grew up around, they get hit with a double whammy of their jobs were shipped overseas, and they got, foreign labor came in to undercut them. We got to return to manufacturing in this country. Those are great jobs. We have twice as many people that work in government than in manufacturing. I think we got to speak to that issue too.
Absolutely. Senator, we're going to be coming back with more here in just a moment. We want to talk a little bit about your book, The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. That is available right now everywhere folks get their books. You can get it on Amazon. And also follow him on X at Eric_Schmitt. It is, quite frankly, Senator, you're getting things done in a very effective way as you have throughout your career. People should be following you and paying more attention because we have too many representatives who like to talk and don't deliver. And we're going to talk about that when we come back. Breaking Battlegrounds, back in just a moment.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.